There is something particularly unique in the wisdom of the martial arts. Even when the action is extraordinarily lively on the battlefield, you should take the principles of the martial arts to the extreme and keep your mind unmoved. You should investigate this thoroughly. This was a good one. I think we've built enough and we've laid enough groundwork here that the story's finally growing into what it really can be. And by that I mean its ability to create a specific flow. And then through that flow and the characters in the story, you're then able to understand everything that it's attempting to convey to you. And now at this point in the story, it's also starting to have a little bit of fun in which the way that it structures and layers all of that together in order to convey that information to you. And it will grab like a theme or a concept and run that as the primary focus instead of, say, the story or the events or the characters. It's going to grab that theme and it will use multiple different characters, multiple different stories, and multiple different timelines to tell the story of an idea versus the story of the characters. It's good. Now, Inshun is coming tomorrow. And Musashi's going to start to prepare for the battle. Then as he's preparing, instead of waiting patiently, he's going to make this rash decision to rush out and attempt to meet him head on in the middle of the night before the proposed time, in which case he just gets there and he has this vision of his father calling him pathetic because he ran out there and he's going to ambush and sneak attack this guy instead of facing him the way he's supposed to. This ultimately breaks him of that idea, and he will leave, and then he goes and he sits down under a tree and actually falls asleep and sleeps through the time that he was supposed to actually meet Inshun for the match. Although this actually gives him just enough time to come to the resolve and the realization that if he were to go and face Inshun, and if he does die in this situation, he's actually okay with that, and he comes to this kind of calm peace with the idea, and then he goes back to camp and he actually finds Inshun there waiting for him with the old man Hozuin. And now the match can begin. And also this is the section of the story that I was just talking about. This entire next volume or two, I don't even know how long it was, is fucking amazing. Just like before, when the match with Inshun lasted for absolutely ever, it's gonna do it again. But this time, instead of the awesome battle lasting for chapters and chapters and chapters, no, this time we get chapters of them literally standing there, not even moving, with literally the study of their opponents being the only things that are going through their minds, and just small focuses on panels of leaves or threads of spider webs with spiders as Musashi's consciousness expands and his bloodlust disappears, and he is overtaken by this overwhelming calm as he takes one step closer to becoming what he's ultimately meant to become, essentially. This, in turn, is going to be intercut with scenes of Otsu and Sekishusai, and she's going to tell him about Musashi, and that's going to set Sekishusai into reminiscing about himself as a child, because the stories of Musashi and his rage remind him so much of himself when he was young. These flashbacks include Sekishusai actually meeting his master and coming under his tutelage. These flashbacks also include a young Hozuin, and we see that the two of them actually studied alongside each other when they were younger underneath the same master. And this is the section where it's going to simultaneously tell the story of the fight and the story of Sekishusai and Otsu and the flashbacks of Hozuin and Sekishusai when they were younger. These scenes will all be intercut sporadically together, and it's going to tell all of these stories simultaneously while being really not about any particular story, because what the story is really focusing on and what it's really trying to convey to you is it's more a contemplation on the growth of man and the evolution of man and how man evolves as a person and as a warrior, and on the way of the sword and what is the way of the sword. And when you've ultimately mastered the way of the sword, you no longer even need the sword. And then when the fight actually starts, it's over very quickly. And Musashi takes down Inshun, and then when Inshun hits the ground, Musashi's bloodthirst takes over, and he ragefully delivers a killing blow. This then sends Inshun's spirit or consciousness out of his body. And I don't know if it's meant to literally be his spirit that comes out, or if it's just, the consciousness, him and his subconsciousness due to the trauma that he has just gone through, like the head trauma. I really kind of hope that it is supposed to literally be his spirit leaving his body, just because I think for this particular type of a story, that extra layer of spirituality being layered into it and kind of placed on top of just the deep mental contemplation and philosophy that's already inherently baked into it is just such a really, really neat and nice path to take with it. So I don't know if that's what's intended. I maybe there will be more as we move forward in the story, but as of right now, I'm not entirely sure. But I really in my head canon, I want it to be just the physical manifestation of his literal spirit left his body and goes through this. And it almost even hints at that due to the fact that there is a scene where Inshun speaks to Musashi and Musashi hears him. So I think that it is supposed to be that, but I'm not really sure, and we'll just kind of have to see as we move forward in the story. But anyway, in the out-of-body experience, Inshun sees his own past and gets to kind of come to terms with his own life and his own existence, and he sees that when he was a child, his mother was raped and murdered, and when his father showed up on the scene, he was murdered as well. He was then taken in by Hosuin, and Hosuin reluctantly trained him in the spirit. He didn't even really want to train him, and he took to it like a fish to water. He trained harder than anyone else. He became better than anyone else, but at the same time, he kind of became locked inside of himself, becoming almost like an island unto himself, and became very much alone in the world. Even though he was surrounded by people, no one really could communicate with him. This being because of his traumatic childhood, and also just the vast gulf that was created by him being so much better than anyone else and finding it difficult to relate to each other, made him a much more interesting and relatable character at the same time after he's essentially been killed. Maybe? We'll see. It was like, son of a bitch. But anyway, at the end of all of this, he comes to the conclusion that he's not ready to die. And then we see both him and Musashi laying next to each other, recovering. So he doesn't die. Which is kind of amazing, because I was pretty sure he was dead when Musashi hit him in the head there for a second. But anyway, after everything that's happened, Inshun now has a renewed outlook on life and a renewed vigor and enthusiasm for training at the school. And him and Musashi look forward to seeing each other again in the future. But this time, they won't try to kill each other. And this was, for me, the most satisfying section of the story so far. Like, for real. But we don't have time to worry about any of that, because it's time to catch up with Matahachi. And Matahachi's gonna Matahachi. He's just gonna lie and steal and cheat his way through life. And then his mom's gonna show up and she's gonna catch up with him, and he's gonna end up lying to her. He'll even show her like the swordsmanship certificate that he has, and she's gonna call him out for it having the wrong name on it, and he'll lie about that. I mean, we're just really starting to stack up this house of cards based on all of his lies, and it just feels more unsteady every lie he adds to it. And I'm not even gonna lie, the further this goes and the more unstable it feels, these sections with Matahachi just really tend to cause me anxiety as I'm going through them. I mean, I understand that that's the point of this section, but it definitely works. It's working. Let me just say that. Anyway, now Musashi's gonna set off on his journey to see his next master, Sekishusai. Meanwhile, Sekishusai's grandson is on the way home to see him. Otsu is currently still his servant, and Densichiro is there currently still trying to get an audience with Sekishusai. Did you get all that? Keeping up here? And to be honest, this was quite a fun section too. Musashi shows up, and him and Otsu kind of are dancing around each other, like just missing each other through scenes, while Jotaro and her keep bumping into each other and having these little conversations, but not really ever putting together that they are connected to the same person. Denshiro does actually have a conversation with Musashi just after he's sent away after not getting an audience with Sekishusai. They basically just reconfirm that they still have a date next year to re-meet and basically have another duel between the two of them. Which at this point, I'm not even gonna lie, I do not see that meeting next year going very well for Denshiro. Also in there somewhere, Musashi's gonna run into Sekishusai's grandson at a bathhouse, and when Sekishusai sends Denshiro away, he also sends him a flower, which will ultimately make its way back to Musashi, and he will become fascinated with this flower because he notices the skill at which it was cut. He will even attempt to replicate the cut of the flower, and he is unable to. This will then cause him to write a message to the school and enclose in the message the cut stem of the flower. And he's going to send that with Jotaro. This does two things, which gets Jotaro attacked by a dog and also gets the school interested in what Musashi has to say, because the message didn't ask for an audience with Sekishusai. It just asked about the stem and who made that cut. This in turn gets Musashi into the school, not to see Sekishusai, but to meet with the other students and have a discussion with them about the stem. And during this, Musashi really just attempts to goad anyone that he can into a duel. He's just trying to start a fight at this point. And Jotaro goes and picks a fight with a dog, which causes the whole place to break out into this big ruckus. And everybody runs outside, and Jotaro has killed Sekishusai's dog. And now the guard's gonna kill him, apparently. Oh god, Jotaro. And this one was just great as well. And like I said, it feels like it's falling into a specific kind of a flow. Like it's literally flowing through the story, and the story itself and the events keep moving forward, but the events move further away and closer to you as you flow through the story, or fade in and out of focus, as in the events never really stop moving in a forward direction, but you focus in or out of them because they aren't always what's really important. Sometimes the ideas and the concepts at play are more important than the actual events that are happening, and the events are just there to keep you moving forward through the story and to help illustrate what the idea and the concept that either Musashi is learning or the idea or the concept that we are supposed to be learning as we move through the story. And the way he's created the flow and the way that he's created this weaving and interweaving of timelines and events to really kind of keep your mind focused on the bigger picture, and he snaps into focus on certain events that will be or are important at that second in time. It is so well written. It's so well crafted. It's very elegant in the way that it is done here. I'm just so impressed with the way that the story is working, and it's telling a certain story in a certain way. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and it is exactly that, if that makes any sense at all. But it's great. It's really good. I would definitely not say that it's better than the last volume, because that last volume was so utterly impressive with what it did. I'm gonna say, I just feel like the storytelling style has really settled into itself in this volume. And I'm going to keep it right where the last one was, at that wonky ass number 9.25. Anyway, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.